What's up, pagan people? Drew here, and I am doing yet another VR. It kind of seems like all I'm doing these days are VRs, I know. But there are so many lovely witches and pagans in this community, and they have cool content and interesting topics that they talk about on their channels, and sometimes, a lot of times, I want to chime in. So basically, that's where we're at. This is a response to intuition and intention. I'm gonna try to get through this video, you guys. My allergies, I'm a mess. I don't know if everybody else is having this problem. Not only do I take a daily allergy pill, but I drink tea with local honey in it every day too. I don't even want to know what would be happening right now if I were not doing those things. So the video might be choppy because, well, my videos can be choppy anyway because I make a lot of mistakes and pauses, but my allergies are kicking my butt. So a lot of coughing, clearing my throat, blowing my nose, the whole thing. A lot of clearing my throat. Anyway, if you've not checked out her channel, you really should. First off, she's just such a soothing person. If you are having a kind of day where you feel like you just need a little breath of fresh air and some peace in your day, she is a channel, a content creator that you're gonna wanna have in your lineup. And then she's nearly always talking about really important, interesting, deep, thoughtful topics that I really appreciate. So yeah, definitely check her out. Of course, I will put a link in the description. So the video in particular that I am responding to is releasing what no longer serves, I believe is what she ended up calling it. So the premise for her video is this discussion, which I believe she started with a little blog on Instagram. She made this video a while ago. I'm just catching up. And I just actually feel really ready to talk about it at this point, honestly. Not because I was trying to keep it to myself, but more I've come to a better understanding of the situation, I guess. But at any rate, she started with her little blog on Instagram. And I say little, I don't mean that to be condescending. I say little because it's Instagram. I imagine it wasn't like a huge blog like you might put out on another platform. But she decided she would ultimately talk about it on her channel. And what she wanted to touch on really was the grief that can arise from transition, change in your spiritual path, your beliefs, your faith, whatever. Like what that can do, how that transition can shift things and make things stand out that they're no longer serving you. They're no longer part of what you need to be doing or who you are necessarily, and how that can make one feel, what can happen within the individual. And it really hit me a little bit. And at the time, I didn't even understand how much, really. I knew I wanted to do this VR, but it wasn't until I'd had some time to process. I don't know exactly how long, a couple weeks maybe. I really realized why the topic had hit me. And I might get emotional in this video. My eyes are already watery because of my allergies, so there's that. But it does make me feel a bit verklempt. So many of you will know that I am in a really large transitionary period in my path and practice. At my core, right now, I'm still the same, and I'm sure I will be, at least to an extent, you know, wherever this leads, wherever I end up. But everything has changed. Everything has changed. I think that most of those changes at present are pretty subtle or small, but still they're there, and there's so many of them. So I want to step back just for a minute. Now, this video might get long, and I apologize for that, but let's just recap a little, okay? You know, when I was a searcher. I was always a searcher. I always knew. I remember being 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. I specifically remember during that time period absolutely knowing 100% that there was something spiritual happening. I didn't have words for it because I wasn't raised religious at all. And, you know, having like knowing that reincarnation was a thing, again, not knowing words for that, but I had these concepts, this understanding, this absolute knowing within me, these spiritual truths within me that I did not have context for. And, looking back as I got older, I understood what was happening there. In high school, I was constantly searching. The first time I ever went to church, I was like 4. I went with a babysitter. I went again when I was in 8 with my grandmother during one summer, and again in 5th grade with a friend. And then in junior high and high school, I went a lot with friends searching. And my mom went for a short period of time, and I went with her. And I just knew that Christianity was not the path for me. It was made very obvious to me very early on, over and over and over again, that was not the path for me. And when I was in my early 20s, I was feeling this really intense calling, to the point where I would cry about it because I knew I was supposed to be doing something, but I didn't know what that was. And again, this is all spiritual in nature. When I was, I think, 26, in 2006, I went through this, what I refer to as an initiation. I got viral pneumonia and was sick for like 2 months, nearly died. It was bad. It was really bad. And a lot of weird things happened to me during and after that illness. A lot of very, very strange things. And that was a very fearful, uncomfortable experience for me. But through that experience and through the next several years after that experience, and even before that experience, there were things that led into that experience. It's a long thing. This initiatory period was quite a while. And then what blossomed from that. At any rate, I have talked about all of these things on my channel, so you can find them. Or if you've been around for a while, you've heard them. So I'm not going to really go into them, but lots of little crazy things. A lot of them will be in my Witchy Tale series, for instance. Not all of them. I talk about the initiation itself in several videos, one of which being a peek into my path. But I will put some links below for anyone who's interested in more details. But at any rate, my point is crazy things happened. And I got to a point in that time period where I learned to trust. And I just learned there's no point in being afraid. There's no point in fighting or resisting what happens. So, last October, when I discovered that, because all of last year something was happening to me. I was under the completely wrong impression. And again, I've talked about this a bit on my channel. I'm going to talk about it more in depth at some point. But I knew that something was coming, spiritually speaking. I thought a guide, but turned out it was a goddess. And when I found out in October who that goddess was, what? And then I quickly came to realize the seriousness of the situation as far as I've worked with gods and goddesses before, but this was different. This was definitely what I had heard referred to as being, the matron or patron situation. But I did very little, it was overwhelming. It was bizarre, but I did very little questioning or resistance. I had very little I just hit the ground running with the whole thing, honestly, because I know at this point that whatever happens like this, I've got that relationship, spiritually speaking, that I know it's in my highest good. It's what I need right now. So I need to just go for it. Let's do this. So that's the attitude that I've had about it. And so, since October until now, we're in April, until mid-March, I would say, I was just flat bookend and not really looking back at all. And maybe it was her video that made me pause for a second. I don't know, but I'm certainly not blaming her. But I did take pause. My path has always been very mystical in nature. And I believe that's still going to be the case to an extent, but I'm being guided to a more ceremonial path and practice at this point. Well, practice, not path, practice. And that is very bizarre for me because my path is mystical. My magic has also been mystical, been more, low magic and folk magic and just intuitive magic. And that's still there at this point, but there is definitely something else working its way in. Structures that weren't there before. I don't know where it's going. I don't know, honestly. It's still early days. For many years, I would describe my path as a shamanic path. And I absolutely feel that that was accurate. But looking at where my path is going, and honestly, this transition has been happening for quite some time. But looking at where my path is going, I could see that title doesn't necessarily align properly with where we're looking right now. Now, I think it's entirely possible that, another 10 years down the road, there may be some weird amalgamation of the two, it's all leading somewhere, right? But at the moment, the focus of my path and practice is shifting very far away from that in the way that it appears to me. I've always worked with angels closely since the time of initiation. They have always been a big part of my path and even my practice. Again, there's been this sort of, I would say at least 5-year period, 4 or 5 year period where both of these things have kind of tapered off a bit and my focus has shifted elsewhere. My focus had, my practice, not so much my path, but my practice had been somewhere else, if you will. The ancestors have been a big part of my path, not since the beginning, honestly. I had some resistance to that. I have many ancestors whom I are immediate relatives, in nuclear family, also, extended family, whom have passed that I am not particularly fond of, did not have a good relationship with, or just didn't know, period, I guess, but maybe didn't have the greatest impression of for one reason or another. There was definitely resistance to working with the ancestors at first. So that's only been part of my path and practice probably for 7 years. But that too has sort of shifted out of my focus. It doesn't seem important right now. When I sit and actually think about that, it's sad. It's sad. The ancestors isn't as hard. Maybe for my personal journey in this life, it was important for me to get to that point where I was comfortable and we could have a relationship, you know what I mean? Where there was that forgiveness and this peace in this ancestral line. I never had a problem with the ancestors as far as, the big picture. It was always just actual blood-related ancestors in this life. But I'm cool with that. Like I made peace with that. We're good. We can work together. It's fine. Right? So maybe that was important. Maybe that needed to happen. But like the angels and the sort of shamanic identity, the shamanic part, that really from day one, from before day one, before I realized, it's such a deep, deep part of my identity, my spiritual identity. Like I'm going to tear up. Like when I'm in it, okay, so how things have, I have a daily practice every single day. I haven't had a daily practice since the end of 2012. It's been a while, okay? And my daily practice was never what it is now. Like my daily practice then was clearing or balancing my chakras each day, or doing a Reiki exercise each day. Like it would shift, but it wasn't anything like it is today. Today it involves there are oracle cards involved and visualization exercises involved, but there is also I greet my goddess, and there's a whole sort of ritualistic thing that happens there, and we share a cup of tea afterward. There's something very rewarding about it. It's something that I never would have imagined for myself in my practice because I've never had a goddess the way that I do right now. I would refer to her as my matron. She is my mother, my guide, my God right now, right? My goddess. And I'm learning a lot about her pantheon, if you will, about her tradition, if you will. I'm doing a lot of guided meditations and some astral work, and there's just a lot that's going on, and I'm fully in it, and I'm not paying attention to any of that other stuff, and I love it. It's so fulfilling and so enriching, and it's so exciting and just wonderful. But if I take a pause and I look back, I get sad because it is so alien and foreign to what I was. This, and I know, there's some element of balance that I need, right? Again, I feel like it's all leading somewhere else eventually, and it'll all sort of come together in some way. But for now, this other part is on the back, and like, it was such a rich, fulfilling, beautiful part of my life, piece of who I am. So letting go of this identity and of this idea of who I was, and that part of my life, like this, for me, this was like a golden renaissance time. I'm not joking. Like, this was all happening during the time when I was working at the witchy metaphysical shop I used to work at, and just having all of these beautiful, enriching experiences. And that's been over for a while, but I was still in that vibration, if you will. I don't know. I was still in that space. And now I'm someplace completely, like, blown out of the water, someplace completely different. And it happened like that. It didn't happen like that, but my perception is that it happened like that. And so when I take a beat, that's just have a breath and look at what has happened, it makes me sad. It makes me sad. But I am really actively seeking to not hold on. I am actively letting go, because I know it's in my highest good. I know it's in my best interest, and I know it's important. It needs to happen, but it's important. And this is part of what this is right now, right? This is me you're being my therapist, if you will. I don't know. You're, you're my soundboard at the moment. I am saying this. I am stating this like we would an intention, right? I acknowledge this. Like, it's important. It's so important that I acknowledge what is happening, and I acknowledge the pain that's there with it, and the sorrow for the loss, really, this loss of identity. But again, if you've watched my channel, you've seen this happening. Like, you can look back, I can look back. We can look back and see this happening over the years. I've only been on YouTube, like, this is my 3rd year, but a lot has happened in those years. There's definitely been a slow transition happening, but when you're in it, and, also daily life, and hindsight is 2020, right? Sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees, blah, blah, blah. Like, when you're right in the middle of it, you're just going, right? You're just doing. And then it's not until you look back and then you sort of see what had happened. So psychologically, emotionally, physically to an extent, right? Because it's all connected. But spiritually, I have to acknowledge that this is what's going on. This is what has happened, and make peace with it and move forward, rather than just what I have been doing, being stuck in it, just being in it. I mean, that's great too. Of course, you want to be present and you want to be fully in whatever moment you're in, but I can't fully heal, release what no longer serves, move forward into what will serve me now and in the future, and then ultimately have an integration, right? If I don't acknowledge that it's happening, and I don't, have an open heart and have some acceptance and just some awareness of the situation, really. And until I watched the video that prompted this and really started to dig in and think about what I needed to release, I didn't really face it all and look at it all and see it for what it was. So for that, I need to say thank you. I wish I knew her name. I wonder if she's ever said it on her channel. She might not want her real name out in the world. But to my lovely sister over at Intuition and Intention, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You held a space for me without knowing it, for me to realize some hard truths and to be able to step outside of myself so that I could step into myself more fully. So thank you for that. It's a beautiful gift. And I think I've said everything that I could say about this topic. Again, I will be talking more in depth about everything with my matron. She has actually encouraged me to do so several times. But I'm not there quite yet. but I will be at some point, and we can get more into this, I guess. Thank you guys for listening to me ramble about my own development. I hope that you're all well, and thanks for watching. Until next time, much love and gratitude.